Doctor Who has allegedly had people hiding behind the sofa since the 1960s, and you can kinda see why. Not a week goes by without someone being deleted, exterminated, or being turned into a paving slab. But there are also plenty of grim and gruesome sequences that aren't so well remembered. I'm Ellie for Who Culture, and this is 10 Doctor Who moments more disturbing than you remember. Number 10. The bacteria at the end of the world. After simulating all of Earth in extremis, the monks decide that their best opportunity to gain humanity's consent to rule over us is to save us from a deadly bacteria accidentally created in a small lab in Yorkshire. And while the pyramid at the end of the world is hardly the most memorable Doctor Who episode out there, that doesn't make this man-made plague any less terrifying a prospect. Because Doctor Who never passes up an opportunity for some extra horror, the bacteria doesn't simply cause people to keel over and die, it completely liquefies them, meaning that we got to watch one of the scientists responsible for its creation dissolve into a steaming slurry of green-brown gunk. Gross. What makes the bacteria really disturbing, though, is context. When the pyramid at the end of the world was first broadcast in 2017, we were a little under 3 years away from the COVID-19 pandemic. But watching the episode back now, the idea of a fast-acting airborne bacteria that can reduce any life on Earth to a festering gloop within a few hours of exposure is absolutely chilling. It comes across as a much more real and dangerous threat, and it's now quite easy to imagine the widespread panic that would occur if the bacteria had escaped. Not to mention all the people stacking their trolleys with loo roll. Number 9. The truth behind the Toler Fane. There is a lot going on in Series 3's epic 3-part finale. The return of Captain Jack, the regeneration of the Master, British government conspiracies, time paradoxes, world domination, the Doctor being aged to the point that he looks like Dobby the house elf, and for a brief moment, the horrifying final end for the human race. It's easy to remember the Toler Fane as little more than the Master's robot minions, but next to all the general death and misery, they offer possibly the most disturbing moment in the finale. This comes when Martha manages to capture one of the Toler Fane, at which point it's revealed that inside their casings are the last remaining humans from Utopia, who have been horribly mutated, cybernetically augmented, and entombed inside their floating metal casings. Not least because of some brilliantly gruesome creature design and the pure horror etched across Martha's face when she realizes what's happened, this moment is as grim as anything you'll see in the show. And yet all anyone seems to remember from this episode is Space Jesus. Oh, Russell. Number 8. The destruction of the Silurians. Nowadays, Doctor Who tends to talk about Brigadier Lethbridge Stewart with almost universal reverence. His daughter Kate fondly recalls him inspiring her pursuit of a scientific career over a military one, and the Doctor has nothing but good things to say about his old friend. In Death in Heaven, he even salutes him, one of the most undoctory things possible, demonstrating his deep respect for the Brig. So it's worth remembering that the Doctor's relationship with his former boss wasn't always so agreeable. In fact, their constant disagreements defined much of their early relationship, and nowhere is this more clear than in the final scene of Doctor Who and the Silurians. After 7 episodes of conflict between the Silurians and the humans, the Doctor is cautiously optimistic that both sides can work together. But before he and Liz head back to London, they're interrupted by a distant explosion and watch in horror as the Brigadier destroys the Silurian base, killing everything inside. As far as UNIT was aware, this was the only Silurian base left, making the Brigadier's actions attempted genocide, as well as mass murder. The Doctor's stunned, disappointed expression says it all. Number 7. The Teller's Brain Soup. It's easy to remember Time Heist as one of the lighter entries in Peter Capaldi's first series, which is one of the most consistently dark since the show's return. But in among the fun heist plot and quirky criminal side characters, this Ocean's 11 riff still finds room for a few grim moments that make it feel right at home alongside Deep Breath, Listen, and Dark Water. The most disturbing of these is early on in the episode, when the Doctor and Clara's crew are first infiltrating the Bank of Carapraxus. The scariest bank teller in the universe detects a man apparently planning to commit some sort of financial crime, and as punishment, melts the man's brain in the middle of the lobby. What follows is a decidedly non-light-hearted montage of the man screaming in various different types of intense pain, while his mind is completely wiped and his head has collapsed in on itself like a punctured tyre. Bonus Grizzly points for the Doctor's line, "Those aren't tears, Clara, that's soup," as we watch the man's liquefied brains leak out of his tear ducts. Yummy! Number 6. Chang Les Death. The Master has always straddled the line between camp and terrifying, and Eric Roberts' TV movie Master hits both of those extremes. He's got the silly robes, the glasses, and the accent that perfectly play up the Master's over-the-top side, but he's also one of the most ruthless incarnations too. While most versions of the Master like to do their killing cleanly, using futuristic weaponry like the tissue compression eliminator, Roberts' Master demonstrates a much more hands-on approach, when he straight up snaps Chang Le's neck. Doctor Who has obviously never been hesitant to depict death, but there's something so much more visceral about this one compared to the way characters are usually dispatched. Someone at the BBC clearly thought the same, as the shot of Chang's death has been cut from the iPlayer version of the TV movie. What wasn't cut was the Master throwing Grace over a balcony, or the very uncomfortable shots of him pulling out one of his own fingernails while talking to a nurse. In general, the TV movie is way darker than you remember, and the Master is a big reason for that. Number 5, the Downfall of Diagoras. Not that there's a good way to get killed by a Dalek, but some are definitely worse than others. Just ask poor old Mr. Diagoras. Daleks in Manhattan and Evolution of the Daleks finds Dalek boy band, the Cult of Skaro, stranded in Depression-era New York, and working on the final experiment in a last-ditch attempt to ensure the survival of the Dalek race by merging human DNA with their own. Dalek Sec decides that the best way to do this is by absorbing the cult's human collaborator and unwilling test subject, Mr. Diagoras, totally enveloping him in Dalek flesh and digesting him inside its casing, until the two have merged into a human Dalek. Most disturbing of all here is that we don't even see Diagoras die. He's seemingly still alive as he gets pulled into Dalek Sec's dad bod and presumably spends multiple horrifying hours being absorbed before the process is complete. Being exterminated doesn't sound fun, but at least it's quick. Number 4, Resurrection's Police Shootout. Eric Saward has earned a reputation for writing some of the bleakest episodes of Doctor Who, with his tenure as script editor characterised by nihilistic narratives, cynical side characters, and extreme violence, sometimes being committed by the Doctor himself. Some of his most infamous moments include shockingly killing off Adric at the end of Earthshock, Attack of the Cybermen's gratuitous torture scene, and, well, pretty much all of Revelation of the Daleks. One of his disturbing stories that has flown slightly under the radar is Resurrection of the Daleks. Largely overshadowed by the subsequent Revelation of the Daleks, Resurrection has the same bleak and depressing atmosphere that defines most of Saward's scripts, but lacks any of the standout moments of shock horror that make his other stories stick in your brain. There is one huge exception though, as Part 1 opens with a chilling sequence where a squad of British policemen armed with submachine guns casually mow down a group of fleeing civilians. It's grounded and it's brutal, with authentic police uniforms and real-world weaponry instead of the usual aliens with lasers, and the filming at such a rundown location adding a dreariness that wouldn't be achievable on studio sets. For a moment, it's easy to forget that you're watching that silly old police box show. Number 3, Our World Is Not Real. A lot of Doctor Who's more disturbing moments tend to be quite visually shocking or gruesome, but Extremis is unsettling for much more existential reasons. The episode revolves around an ancient text called the Veritas, which apparently causes everyone who reads it to kill themselves. Eventually, it's revealed why. The entire world is a simulation and everyone in it is merely a digital copy of their real selves. While this is certainly a compelling idea, it's the characters' reactions that really stand out, as Bill and Nardole end up at the CERN research facility and encounter a group of scientists in the process of committing mass suicide. Watching this group of highly intelligent and rational people, all completely devoid of any will to live and casually preparing to blow themselves up, is truly unsettling, and drives home the implications of the concept of simulation theory. Fingers crossed the Matrix is only a movie. Number 2, Miss Evangelista's fate. We're not about to try and claim that everybody's forgotten how scary Silence in the Library and Forest of the Dead are. It's one of the best loved stories of the new series, and the Vashta Nerada have remained iconic villains despite only appearing a single time on TV. But there is one scene that falls through the cracks when the episodes are being discussed, and that's the fate of hapless assistant Miss Evangelista. The first character to be killed by the Vashta Nerada, her data ghost is caught and uploaded to the library's network, though not without becoming corrupted. This leaves Evangelista horribly disfigured, but with massively enhanced intelligence. In her own heartbreaking words, she is brilliant and unloved. The reveal itself is shocking and tragic all at once, as is the case with most of the Donna storyline throughout this episode really. That moment where her kids disappear right in front of her is like a knife through the heart. And to think, there was a time when people doubted Catherine Tate's dramatic chops. Number 1, Kane's death. Dragonfire is a story predominantly remembered for two things: the introduction of the baseball bat-wielding, explosive-making companion Ace, and for having one of the worst cliffhangers ever, where the 7th Doctor dangles himself off a cliff for seemingly no reason. What it isn't remembered for is containing what might be the most visually gruesome death in the whole show. At the story's climax, the ruler of Iceworld, Kane, who has to keep his body nice and cool, is killed after exposing himself to scorching hot, unfiltered sunlight. Now, we can only assume that the production team had just finished a rewatch of Raiders of the Lost Ark, because instead of the simple crossfade or colourful visual effect you'd expect from an episode of Classic Who, we get to watch Kane's entire face melt off while he screams in agony in a bloody great bit of practical effects work. The special effects team clearly put a lot of effort into this quick shot. As you can see, layers of bone and a complete eyeball being revealed as Kane's skin and flesh are liquidized. What's that they say? Doctor Who is for kids? Well, this bit definitely wasn't. And that concludes our list, but for some disturbing moments you didn't watch, why not check out 10 dark Doctor Who moments you weren't allowed to see? In the meantime, I've been Ellie for Who Culture, and in the words of Riversong herself, goodbye, sweeties.